Dave Justus is a two-time cancer survivor who has made a habit out of turning his life lemons into lemonade. He has more than 20 years experience making a difference for nonprofit organizations such as Make-A-Wish Foundation and United Way. In 2011, Guinness World Records declared him officially amazing after leading a community effort to raise awareness for children with cancer by setting the world record for the longest lemonade stand, nearly a half-mile long. Think about that. That is a long lemonade stand. Thus, his affectionate nickname, Lemonade Dave. Today, as a speaker, author, and life coach, he is on a mission to help 1 million people reach their full potential by 2020. And before you leave today, you will discover the secret behind Guinness World Records and how you can live a more fulfilling and amazing life. So please welcome Lemonade Dave.
How many are familiar with Guinness World Records? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take you back to the time that you heard of Guinness World Records. So what I want you to do is I want you to come back with me to the echoing halls of your elementary school. And I want you to imagine that you're standing in the hallway waiting in line. But today is a special day because you are not going to be last, you're going to be first. So you're elbowing the class bully, you're pushing to be able to get in the front of the line, because today's that day that when you look through the window of the library, you're going to get what book? You're going to get that one book that everybody wants to read, Guinness World Records. Why are we so obsessed with Guinness World Records? So we become excited about Guinness World Records because you see, at this time, this was the world's largest twins on motorcycles. We were just obsessed by that picture. The world's tallest man next to the world's shortest man, and you think to yourself, man, what an odd couple, right? The woman with the world's longest fingernails, and what's the first thought that comes to your mind when you're a kid? You think, how does she even wipe her butt? That's what I want to know, right? So you begin to go through this process. And then, of course, for the guys, the world's fastest car, you know, the one with the rocket on the back. This is what kept us obsessed. And then there was the world's largest stack of pancakes, the world's largest potato, and the world's largest pizza. We just could not put the book down, right? There's just something about Guinness that keeps us engaged and excited. And it gets you thinking in your mind when you're a kid. You begin to think, well, what if? What if? Everybody put your hands on your hips, and I want you to say, what if? So now think about when you were a kid. So what if I ran a little faster to the oak tree, right? Because that's when you're a kid. So when you go out on the recess, you ran as fast as you could. Or maybe you said, what if I climbed a little faster to the top of the monkey bars, or actually made it to the top? You begin this process of your mind of thinking, what if? What if? What if? How can I be everything that I'm capable of becoming? You know, and you're right, it's not a world record. You know, running as fast as you can across the playground was not a world record, but it was a personal best. The willingness to be able to try to do your personal best is your first clue to the secret behind Guinness World Records. As we go through this presentation today, I'm going to give you 5 clues that will ultimately lead to the secret. And we'll see if you'll be able to figure that out. So the first clue is your belief. Belief like when you were a child. Find yourself a partner, give them a high five, and then sit down because we're going to do a quick activity. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to talk to your partner, and I want you to share with them one recent goal that you had, and what was the outcome of that goal. What was the outcome of that goal? Okay, so take 2 minutes and do that. Okay, let's think about this for a minute. How many of you actually had set goals? Is there somebody here who accomplishes every goal that they set? Is there anybody out there? Occasionally there's 1 or 2 people in the audience who say that they've accomplished all their goals. So every time we have a goal, we end up with an outcome, right? So how many of you in discussing your outcome said that you set a goal but you failed? How many people had set the goal but didn't reach their goal? Okay, and then how many of you set the goal and then had success with that goal? So what's interesting is 5 people raised their hand and said they succeeded, and 5 people said they didn't succeed, and everybody set goals. So all you guys must be in the middle somewhere, right? So what would happen if there was something in between success and failure for us? Have you ever thought about this? That what if when you set a goal, the goal wasn't necessarily to succeed or to fail, but was to grow? What if your focus is on the amount of growth that you experienced while you set this goal so that you could actually grow as a person in your profession and your personal life? Darren Hardy says, after setting a goal, most people ask, what do I need to do next? But he says the real question we should be asking ourselves is, what do I need to become? Okay, so what do we need to become to be able to achieve those goals? So as we begin to go through this process, I want to give you an example. Okay, we'll start on diets. How many of you have ever been on a diet before? How many of you feel like you need to go on a diet after eating all that food we ate today? Right? So the majority of us, so we're going through that. So let me introduce you to Oprah. Okay, how many of you know who Oprah is? Is Oprah's weight an issue in the papers nonstop, right? She's gaining weight, she's losing weight, she's gaining weight, she's losing weight. Oh, look at Oprah. Well, this is the thing with Oprah, is that Oprah lost 30 pounds with the miracle diet. That's what you hear about, right? We begin to say, oh, she lost 30 pounds on this miracle diet. And then what do we begin to think? We say, oh my gosh, if Oprah lost 30 pounds on the miracle diet, then who should lose 30 pounds on the miracle diet? I should, right? So that's what we begin to say. So we set this goal. Our goal becomes to lose 30 pounds. So what happens? We set the goal. We begin to follow the program. We suffer through all the chalky shakes that you have to drink, all the smelly, sweaty exercise at the gym, all those people. And the good news is that we lose the 30 pounds. So we're really excited we lose the 30 pounds, but why is it that we don't keep off that weight? Do you know why that is? Because as soon as you accomplish that kind of goal, your brain says, oh my gosh, we did that, so what's next? Right? So then our brain begins, what are we going to do now? We lost 30 pounds, so what's next? So what if we changed into the why power? We set goals for a bigger reason. So we had a goal that we set was really, really big and something that allowed us to be able to grow. So for example, if we took the same dieting example and we changed that to this goal. We set ourselves an extraordinary life goal to live a life of health and wellness so I can enjoy time with my family. If that's what our bigger goal was of what we wanted to be able to accomplish. And then what happens is, then losing 30 pounds only becomes an objective of that larger goal. Allows us to be able to continue to grow and move towards a healthier lifestyle. Another objective might be to lower your blood pressure, right? So you'll be able to do things. And then what happens is your gym membership, your weight plan, all those other things you do just become tools or resources for you to be able to accomplish your bigger life goal. So this is what I have. We say, well, I got a gym membership. Well, that's great, but what are you going to do with that gym membership? But if you had a bigger life goal, that just becomes a vehicle for you to be able to accomplish the healthy lifestyle that you're trying to lead. So then an action step might be, you say, well, if I'm going to live this healthy lifestyle and I'm going to lose 30 pounds part of this diet, maybe I need to eat more fruits and vegetables, right? Less fried macaroni and cheese, more fruits and vegetables. And maybe another action step might be that I'm actually going to go to the gym and exercise 3 times a week. Okay, so then what happens is then you are actually able to track what really happened that week. So now you know that, well, yeah, I really did go to the gym for 3 times this week. I did really good. I got up. I met that part of the goal. That was an output. Or maybe you lost 2 pounds this week as a part of that process. So what happens is when you change this goal to a big life goal, then things that normal people say are goals become an objective of a bigger goal. Because really, what is the reward here of being able to lose the 2 pounds or ultimately lose the 30 pounds? What was our objective that we wanted to do, or our bigger goal? Yeah, we wanted to have a healthy lifestyle, right, so that we could spend time with our kids. So here's the real reward that will keep you motivated. So maybe for the first time in a long time, you were able to walk with your children, you heard about how their day was, and you were able to go more than 5 minutes without being tired. Okay, can you see how that would keep you going to want to keep eating healthy and be able to do things? Because that's something that's going to keep going. It's not going to limit you in where you do it. So one of the challenges we always have when we set goals is we set these goals and say, okay, I'm going to reach this target, right? And then we reach that target and then we don't know. So one of the things that I've found and I've read and that I enjoy is I try and set goals that are really, really big. And the reason that I set goals that are really, really big is because I know that if I do accomplish them, it's amazing. But even if I don't, that it will cause me to grow and stretch and become further along my process that I want to be able to do. So what I want you to do is I want you to get back with your partner now. I want you to get back with your partner. Now I want you to take that same goal that you had just set and see if you can come up with a why behind you should do it. See if you can change that from whatever that goal was to a more of a global life experience that would cause you to grow. So get with your partner, take a minute, and see if you can figure that out. Okay, can you see the benefit of setting an extraordinary life goal versus just setting a goal to be able to lose 30 pounds? Can you see how that might benefit your thinking in your life and what you're able to do? How many of you plan to set a New Year's resolution? Anybody? I know we're not really that far away. It's like coming up. How many of you set regular New Year's resolutions? And a lot of times we set things, well, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. What I'm going to encourage you to do as you set your resolutions, I want you to set a resolution that is a bigger picture resolution of who you want to become in the new year, not necessarily what you want to do as far as lose weight or whatever your different accomplishments are, but how that would help you to grow into the kind of person that you really want to be able to be. Does that make sense? So that's the second clue behind the secret behind Guinness World Records. Who thinks they know what the secret is yet? Anybody? That's good, because we're going to keep going. So there's a picture of me with my children, Zach and Dallas. Dallas is sitting in my lap. He's 3 at that time. And we're going to Disney World. But the problem is, Dallas doesn't want to go. Now, what 3-year-old doesn't want to go to Disney World, right? We're thinking, okay. So I say to Dallas, Dallas, why don't you want to go to Disney World? And he says, like a 3-year-old would say, is, I don't want to fly. I'm afraid to fly. So what happens when you have a 3-year-old and they're afraid to fly?
Drive.
No, that's even crazier. That's even crazier. We're still flying. So what happened was everybody began to try and figure out why poor Dallas, age 3, is afraid of flying. And so what do you think are some of the reasons that the adults came up with on why he would be afraid to fly? What do you think it are? What's that? You saw the news maybe? Yeah, no, you didn't see the news. But that could scare you with some of this stuff. What's that?
Never flown before?
He had never flown before. Do you think maybe he was afraid of heights? That's what people thought, but no, not the noise. But that is true. They can be very loud. So he wasn't afraid of noise. He wasn't afraid of heights. He wasn't claustrophobic. So finally, after 2 weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. We're ready to leave in a week. And I'm like, Dallas, tell me what's the problem? He said, Dad, he goes, what happens if the pilot has to go to the bathroom? Right? Now we laugh now, but what happens is that exact same logic we use in our lives, right? We said things, and even though we know that there's probably a logical answer, we have some limiting belief that keeps us from being able to accomplish what we're really trying to go to. And I said, Dallas, that's easy. We can solve that. And so luckily, a 3-year-old is very trustworthy. Here we are at the airport. This is right after we met a couple pilots. And I picked Dallas up, and of course he disappears in my arms because now we're going to talk to strangers, and you're not supposed to talk to strangers. But I went up and I said, okay, this is my son Dallas. We're getting ready to fly to Disney World, and we have a question. And they said, sure, Dallas, what's the question? I said, well, Dallas wants to know what happens if you guys have to go to the bathroom. And the pilot gave some great advice, not just for a little kid getting on a plane. He said, the first thing we do, Dallas, is we go to the bathroom before we get on the plane, right? So the first thing we should always do is prepare ahead of time. That was the message. Be prepared ahead of time. So plan ahead. And then the second thing they said, and don't worry, Dallas, if we have to go to the bathroom, we don't both go at the same time. So we always have a partner of different people that we're able to share responsibility with. So guess what do you think happened with Dallas on the plane? Slept like a baby, right? He got on the plane, he got in his seat, and like all that stress from the weeks leading up to that, he was out like a light. And he hates, because now he's 16, almost 17, goes, Dad, why do you always tell that story? And I said, because it's a good story. It's a perfect example how our beliefs can limit us in getting something that we really want. What kid doesn't want to go to Disney World, but he had this belief that if the pilot had to go to the bathroom, that somehow something bad was going to happen to him. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about some different beliefs that we have and how this works. Because the seeds of our belief can be the start of an extraordinary life. Okay, if we're able to change how we believe and what we think about, it can lead us to areas and things beyond that we could ever expect. So this is a beach ball. And I actually had a beach ball in the back, but the room was a little wide to be able to do that. But if I had the beach ball in front of me and I held it up, I might say over here, I might say, so what color do you guys see on the beach ball? And they would say orange, right? And then I'd say, well, what color do you guys see? And you would say yellow. And so then I'd say to you guys, well, what color do you see? And then you would say, oh, well, we see blue. And you see red. So this is what happens. Those are all different perspectives on the exact same thing, right? It's all a beach ball. We just see different colors and different perspectives. So I want to talk about a little about some of our beliefs. So Dallas' situation is an example of a limiting belief. And sometimes we have limiting beliefs that keep us from getting to where we want to go. Okay, so now I want to talk about traditional beliefs. Now, I used to have a friend of mine, and when we would go to the laundromat, the washer would finish, and he'd take his towels out of the washer, and he'd like shake them like crazy. And I'd said, Peter, what are you doing? And he said, I'm shaking out the extra water. And I said, Peter, there's no water in those towels. They've just been in the spin cycle for 10 minutes. But he believed that his mom had told him that she always shook the towel. He saw his mom do that, right? And then she throws them in the dryer. So his perception was that she was shaking the extra water out. But in reality, what was she probably really doing? She's just unwrinkling them, right? She's fluffing them up because they're going to dry faster if you take that out. Now, for me, that was a perfectly logical explanation of why his mom would do that. For Peter, not so much. He was sure that those times that he shook them, that he was shaking out the extra water. So sometimes we have traditions or things that we just believe for whatever period of time that we don't necessarily, they might not even be true. But we've always believed. That's just the way it is. So a good thing that I always like to do is I always like to think, and as a life and business coach, that I do this with people, I say, they have a belief, and then I say, well, is that true? Now, it might be true for you, but that doesn't mean that it's true for everybody. And if it's not true for everybody, then it doesn't necessarily have to be true for you. Now, you guys are not in sales, but when I do talk to salesmen, they always have a fear of what word? What do no salesmen like to hear? They hate no, right? They go, oh my gosh, I hate that word. So what happens is, the traditional belief is that when somebody says no, it means that they're not interested. But how many of you, when some of that food was going around today, did not take everything, said no to one of those dishes? Did anybody say no to some of those dishes? Did that mean that you didn't want to eat today? Does that mean you never want to eat? It just means that right now you already had 5 courses, 6 courses, and you didn't eat a 7th, right? That's where we were at. So sometimes we have beliefs in different things that we go through that are traditional beliefs. And there's reasons we do things, but we don't necessarily know why we continue to do them. They're family traditions or cultural traditions. So think about the first thing is limiting beliefs, and then traditional beliefs. Now this is very interesting. The University of Virginia did a study where they took people and they put them on a skateboard. And they put them on top of the skateboard on top of a hill, and then they had heart monitors and stuff on them, and they asked them how high they thought the ramp was. And the correlation was, the more afraid they were, the higher they made the ramp. And so what does that teach us about our beliefs? If we're afraid of something, then maybe we put more emphasis on that than we had before. How many of you have ridden a roller coaster before in your life? Okay, my other son, Zach, who you saw on there, was so excited to go on a roller coaster ride until we had to wait in line for an hour and a half. And as we waited in line, he got more nervous and more afraid and we finally we're like the next ones to go on. He says, I can't go on. And so we had to go off, okay? So we walked all the way down the thing to be able to do that after waiting all that time. And I was originally very frustrated because it was an hour and a half and I was ready to go. And then what happened was he got his courage up and we found a shorter line, and he went and he got on the roller coaster, and it was a good experience for him. And then guess what happened? He became a roller coaster maniac. So this is what happens. He goes and he becomes totally excited about it because he got that fear out of his system. He changed what was fearful into something that empowered him. So sometimes we have a belief about a fear that keeps us from going to do things that we want to do that could be fun. Have you ever had a fear of something and then you were so afraid and then that never happened? You ever have that happen? You're really afraid that, it was going to go and then it never turns out that way, right? Or maybe it's never as bad as you thought it could be. So when we have a fear and we recognize it as a fear, not as a bad thing, but it's something that we can overcome, and it allows us to do what? Grow, right? So we begin to grow and get past that. How many of you know how to ride a bike? I'm not going to ask how long it's been since you rode a bike, because for me it's been a long time, but I'm sure I could still get on there and ride a bike. But the first time you were going to ride a bike, was it easy to do? No, it wasn't, right? Remember, it's going, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. How do I go? And I pedal, and you take 2 steps, and then you fall over, but then before you know it, you're riding your bike, you're pulling wheelies and all these other kind of things. It's the exact same way in our life today. We get these fears that we have, and when we overcome them, we find these amazing things on the other side that we're able to grow and develop from. How many of are Tony Robbins fans? You familiar with Tony Robbins? But one of his beliefs that are empowering for him is there's always a way. Okay, so you can have limiting beliefs that keep you from doing things. You can have traditional beliefs. You can have fear-based beliefs. And then you can have empowering beliefs. Now, what are the benefits of having a belief that there's always a way? If you have that belief that there's always a way, that's not like the person. So I'm sure that, Angela, you guys experienced somewhere along the line in planning this that something wasn't going the way it was supposed to be, right?
Yes.
That was at 7 o'clock this morning, probably, when they arrived here. No, everything's really gone very well. But what happens is you can have a different mindset. Some people will say when things aren't going right, what do they say? Oh, no, here we go again. It's over. It's a bad time. It's the end of the world. You know, there's those people. Those are the people on Facebook, right? Those are the people that say, it happened again. But they never tell you what it is, you know. So then you have to say, well, what happened? What happened? You know, so all that kind of stuff. When you have an empowering belief that there's always a way, or you find something that allows you to be able to believe in something that helps you to grow and move forward, there's great power in that, right? There's great power in being able to do that. We're going to do a little exercise here. It doesn't require a partner. But I want you to imagine today that you went to the bank. Even though we don't have to go to the bank as much as we used to, but now you're in the bank, and I want you to imagine that all these other people are in the bank too. Okay, so everybody in here is in the bank. And from the back comes this little guy, comes in with a gun, and he shoots the gun, one bullet, and the only person it hits is it hits you in your shoulder. It just nicks your shoulder so you're bleeding a little bit. Do you consider that to be lucky or unlucky? How many of you think that being shot in the arm was an unlucky happening? Raise your hands up higher than that. So why would you say that it was unlucky? What was one of the reasons you would think that it would be unlucky?
Because out of all the people, I got shot.
Okay, because how many of you thought about this? She said, out of all the people here, I got shot. Now, if that was a lottery, she'd say, I'm lucky because out of all these people, I won. Or when we do the raffle in a little while, she'll say, out of all these people, but because she got shot, out of all these people, I was the one that got shot, right? How many of you had that thought? Similar thought to that, right? Okay, now how many of you think that it was lucky, that you were lucky in that experience? Why do you think you were lucky?
Because the bullet just grazed your shoulder.
Because the bullet just grazed your shoulder, right?
Didn't die.
You didn't die, right? And so what happens is when you begin to think about your different beliefs and different things, so we have part of the room that's happy that they only got grazed, right? You could have been shot in the chest, in the head, anything, but you only got grazed in the arm, and yes, you're bleeding, but you're going to survive, right? So what happens is we have these different beliefs of how we think about things. So sometimes we think things are unlucky or lucky, good or bad, okay? But there's always two sides to the exact same situation. So when you find yourself in one of those times and you begin to think, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this New Jersey traffic again, right? You ever have that experience? How many of you are going to drive home on 287 tonight? Okay, you're about to have that experience again. And so what happens is we can have one of two attitudes, right? We can get all upset. We can say, you know, I'm never going to get home. It's the end of the world. Now the radio doesn't work, whatever, all those different things. Or we can say, okay, well, you know what? At least the sun's out. We're making progress. At least it is moving. At least I'm not the guy that's in the accident, right? So it's better for me, you know, or the guy gets pulled over. You know, this is a true story. This is probably about, I don't know, maybe about 3 weeks ago. I'm driving on 287 North, and they have the big sign that says, merge right, accident ahead, right? So the traffic's like backed up for like 5 miles, waiting to get to that exit. Exit 14, you know, that's the, we get all the way up, there was no accident. The accident had already been cleared and gone. They just never moved the sign. But for 5 miles, we had to all move over. Now, I could have said at the end, you know, oh my gosh, those people are so stupid. You know, why didn't they change that sign? But no, I chose my thoughts to say, okay, hey, well, at least I made it through. You know, maybe somebody was an expert. It's not that bad to be able to do that. So we have an ability to be able to change how we think about things that we do. So I want to give you a little formula for that. How many of you know your ABCs? Everybody. So the A in this example, to be able to help you out, is whatever the adversity or the event is. So that could be being stuck in traffic, getting shot in the bank, whatever the problem or challenge is that you're going through. And that is what the A stands for. Okay, so we all have those. You can all think of one right now without even having to go too far because they happen every day. The B becomes your belief. So what meaning are you attaching to that event? So we had someone who said, oh my gosh, I'm lucky to still be alive, that it only grazed me. So that was the meaning that she attached to this adverse event. And then we had other people who said, you know, well, why me out of all these people? So that was the belief that they attached to that. And what happens is, as soon as you attach that meaning to it, that's what gives you the feeling. Same thing, so the meaning that we attach to things. So whatever that event, we attach a meaning, and that provides a feeling. And at that time, we have a choice, and that's what the C stands for. What action are we going to take based on our beliefs about the situation? And I'm not saying, you know, the old Pollyanna, you know, hey, everything's great and happy, you know, that kind of thing. But we do have a choice, right? We can decide how we want to decide on those various things. So your ABCs are whatever the event is, okay, or the adversity. Then the B becomes what is your belief or meaning that you're attaching to that event, regardless of whether that's a food, an activity, a person. The choice I have to make is now, how do I want to react from that, okay? So we all have that opportunity. So that is your third clue to the Guinness World Records. Are you keeping track of these so far? First one was what? Your belief, right? That childhood belief that what if we could really do things. The second was what? Our goals, right? To be able to set goals that cause us to grow and stretch and be able to accomplish amazing things. And the third thing is the action, or the decisions that we make related to this process. The common thing that people say, and obviously I wrote a book about time management, but people always ask me about time management, right? But for most people, you feel like you're on this non-stop treadmill, right? Like this hamster wheel just going. You're always working, but what? Never really get anything done. You ever have one of those days? You worked all day, at the end of the day you said, holy crap, I didn't get a thing done that I really needed to do. If you're in that situation, read the book. There's some great information. I'm just going to share a few of the highlights on there. Because you want to get off that time treadmill. Okay, we are very time conscious, very focused and stressed on those things. So inside the book, you'll discover how to better manage your time, and then how to prioritize your day about what's most important. So the good thing about the book is, why did I write it? People always say, well, why did you write that? Well, this is a picture of me when I was back in the Navy. And I was in the Navy. I joined the Navy, saw the world, had the whole world ahead of me, and things were going really well. And then, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with cancer. Okay, so when you're 20 years old and you get cancer, it's not fun. But the good thing was, I was in the Navy, and I'm hanging around a bunch of other guys who also have cancer, and say, Dave, your hair looks like crap. Go get a mohawk. And so I had a mohawk, and I went by the name Kemosabe for the rest of that time. Okay, so I went through all the treatment, very optimistic about being able to get through that, and then I was cancer-free for about 6 months. And then guess what happened? It wasn't a relapse. I had a different kind of cancer. The first cancer I had, they said, oh, Dave, don't worry, 90% cure rate with treatment. Just go through treatment and everything will be great. Second time, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they said, Dave, you got 6 months left to live. And I said, well, what are my chances of making it? They said, oh, well, we don't like to use percentages, only when it's in their favor. Okay, but luckily for me was that I had a spiritual healing. So regardless of what your beliefs are about God and different things, I had a spiritual healing, and from that day forward, I have never had another symptom. Now, let me tell you the rest of the story about that. The day that I went to that prayer service, I was actually on my way to the hospital to get a second opinion. And on the front seat, I had all my medical records, I had all my x-rays, everything they had given me. And I was going for the second opinion. And I just knew that something had happened, right? So now I go there, and the next day I go to the doctor, but I know I have nothing. I have no sore throat, I have no swollen lymph nodes. I knew that I was healed. But doctors generally what? They don't believe in spiritual healings, so they said, Dave, you're crazy, this is a very aggressive cancer. And if you don't take treatment, you won't be here in 6 months. And I said, but doctor, I'm healed. And he said, well, we're in Washington, D.C. Let's call up the National Cancer Institute and let you talk to an expert on this cancer. So they did. And he said, Dave, you won't be here in 6 months if you don't take this treatment. Any guesses how long ago that was?
35 years.
Close. June 19th of 1986. So 31 years ago, I was healed from cancer. Now, what happens is when God plucks you out of obscurity and you're only supposed to have 6 months left to live, and now you have your whole life left to live, you begin to think, He must have a purpose for me, and I better start making better use of my time. So I began this process. I was always trying to read things and, what's better ways to use my time, because when you think you only have 6 months left, time is very, very valuable. But now I had my whole life again, and so I wanted to make the most of it. So I began to look for ways to be able to figure out how to manage my time. If you go on Google, and I went the other day, and you put in time management tips, okay? So you put in time management tips and you do this search, there's only 23,300,000 possible tips out there to be able to help you better manage your time. So how are you going to figure that out? So there's tons of things out there for things you'd be able to do. So what I realized was there's a million ways to better manage your time, but I didn't have the foundation of why I should better manage my time, right? I didn't know why I kind of knew, but I didn't really have a plan to be able to figure that out. So I began to do this research and this study, and over years I went to time management courses, I went to read books on it. It was a subject of mine to become an expert. And I realized that I really didn't have this plan for this. So when I wrote the book, I wanted to come up with a plan that would be able to help everybody to be able to figure out which one of those millions of possible tips could better benefit you. So I wrote the book. This is a representation of Ben, who is in the book. Okay, and Ben is a regular guy who works at a bank, and he can't manage his time. Okay, another New Year's coming up, so it's actually almost exactly around the same time. And he just knows that all these things that he wished he would have done this past year, he hasn't gotten done. Now, how many of you are already thinking, I can relate to Ben, right? So what happens is Ben goes and he makes his New Year's resolution that he's going to better manage his time. That is actually one of the top 5 things that people will make as a New Year's resolution for the new year. So what happens is Ben goes to his boss, who's really good at managing his time, and his boss sends him out to meet a variety of people. So he meets all kinds of different characters. So it's in a nice story format, and he shares different things. He learns some different from each one of these people. So I'm just going to share with you a couple of things that he learned so that you don't have a reason to not read the book. So you still want to read the book. These are just a couple of highlights of things that will be able to help you out. So one of the first things that happens is there's a myth. Everybody thinks that you can manage your time. The reality is you can't manage your time. Okay, the truth is you can only manage your priorities. What happens is no matter how much you set your various priorities, things get in the way and things come up. So a priority within the book, and what my belief is what is most important to you. Are you spending that time on what is most important to you in your life, in your situation, your job, whatever that is? First, I want you to find your partner, and I want you to share what you think is the most important thing you need to do today. And I know that you guys have a lot of these things. I've already heard people over talking saying, oh my gosh, I haven't been able to check my emails all day, and all these things, all these priorities. So talk to your partner, share what is the one most important thing that you need to do today. But if you have important things that you needed to do today, and you wish you had more time to do it, let's talk about a couple things that will be helpful for you, okay? So you don't need to wait for a life-changing event to know what those most important priorities are. But I want you to be thinking about what is that most important thing you would do. So one of the tools in there is time mapping. Who is familiar with what time mapping is? Any ideas?
Laying out your day.
Yeah, so it's laying out your day. So what happens when you time map, you track how you're using your time. And you should do it for several days. You should do days of both where you're working and days where you're off. And what you want to do is track all your activities from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. Now, some people say you need to do this for weeks and months. You don't. We're creatures of habit. If you do it for a few days, you'll get a good idea. If you do like 2 or 3 days at work and 1 day of home, you'll get a pretty good idea of where we're at. So what do you think you'll discover when you do that? What do you think you'll discover as you begin to look how you're using your time? A couple important things you'll discover. The first thing is how many hours that you can actually control. Did you have control over? And what you'll learn is it's not many. Okay? The second thing is that you can only control the time, you can only manage the time that you actually have control over. Okay? So what happens is, for most people, and everybody's situation is different. If you're a single mom or a parent of a young baby, your time is completely different, right? But for most people, they find the only time they can actually control is when they first wake up in the morning. So those first hour to 2 hours that you get up in the morning is the only time that you really have control. Because then what happens after that? Right, obligations and responsibilities. And for me, that changed a little bit because we got a dog about 2 months ago. And when you're the first one up, guess what you're the first one to have to do? Walk the dog. I hate that because it wrecks my time in the morning because I've already lost control over part of that time. So what I did was I took that and I was interfering with my routine, so I figured out a way to be able to walk the dog and still be productive. So I took one of those situations, I said, instead of getting mad about having to walk the dog and not being able to do what I need to do, I take that time to be thoughtful and think about people in my life that I want to pray about or think about activities I need to be able to do. So while I'm on that 10-minute walk, I'm using that time to kind of get myself mentally organized and set up. So now I don't mind walking the dog. So now I've turned that into a good experience. But I know for those first few hours, I know that by 8:30 in the morning, that pretty much the rest of the day I don't really have that much control over. Because I might have planned on coming or doing something and something else comes up, right? Does that ever happen? Yes. Or that somebody gets sick or an employee calls in sick. So what happens is when we realize that we really can't control all of our time, that we can just do the best to be able to manage it, then we manage our priorities. That will really help you with your time because then you're not as frustrated at the end to realize what you didn't get done. So how many would like to think about how to get somebody to respect how you're using your time? How many have people constantly interrupt you when you're trying to work? How many of them are really emergencies that probably could have just waited, right? It's always an emergency. That's why they need to talk to you. And as soon as the key words is they say, hey, got a minute? Then you should say no immediately because that means you have 45 minutes to an hour. So there's this guy that I heard about that he worked from home. Now, the majority of you don't have the luxury to be able to work from home because you're in various facilities and different things. But there's a lot of professions and stuff where they work from home. And this guy was working from home and he had kids. And what happens when you have kids and you're at home?
Interruptions.
Constant interruptions because he would say, look, I'm trying to work. And they say, Dad, well, I didn't know. Billy fell down and now he's crying. And Dad's like, I'm on a phone call, you know. So what happens is he set up the system. When Dad is wearing a tie, then he's at work. And when Dad's not working, he takes the tie off. I shared this in a seminar a few years ago, and this guy came back to me and he said, you know, I went and I did that exact idea. It was a realer. He said, I went one step further. I told my son that the reason I was wearing the tie is Daddy was working hard so we could go to Disney World. You know, so then he said, the kid never bothered me for about 2 weeks. And then one day, he went to the dinner table, let his tie on, and his son said, Dad, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean? He goes, I'm done working. He goes, no, you're not. We're going to Disney World. Get that tie back on. So now the kid got the vision of what they were trying to do and was able to respect how he's using his time. So what they did was they were able to set up a system. So I'll give you an example. How many of you have clients that you've been meaning to call back, but you never get the time to be able to do it? Doesn't that happen? There's always things, or those emails we need to respond to because we keep getting interrupted. So what if I went to the people that I work with and I said, you know what, between 10 o'clock and 10:45, the 45-minute work hour, I prefer not to be disturbed because for that 45 minutes, I'm going to work on the most important priority that I have, and today it's calling those people back. After 10:45, if you need something, let me know. But in the meantime, I need the respect for that. Do you think that they'd come barging in if it wasn't a real emergency? Other than that, they shouldn't really have a reason, right? So now what happens is they go through and they respect how you're doing that time. Now, it's a double-edged sword because now they're respecting how you're using your time, and now you just told everybody who you work with that you're making those callbacks or responding to those emails, and guess what you have to do? Now you have to do it. But the good news is, the average person gets interrupted every how many minutes, do you think? Every 6 minutes. It's probably less than that now. Okay, a lot of that is self-interruptions. They have their little Facebook alerts on, right? Oh, beep, oh, better see what's going on. If you were able to have 45 minutes where you're uninterrupted, right? And if you were able to work 45 minutes uninterrupted and the average person gets interrupted every 6 minutes, technically you'd be 7 times more productive than the average person by having that block of time that was uninterrupted working on your most important activities. Okay? You can't do that every hour necessarily, but here's the great news. So what do you do with the last 15 minutes of the hour? What do? You reward yourself, right? You can reward yourself by looking on Facebook or getting up, getting a cup of coffee, going, whatever you would do otherwise, now you have a spot that you're able to do that. And so that is a great tool and thing within the book to be able to do. If you can just get people to respect how you're using your time, then you know that is major. So time is your most valuable resource. So here's the 4th clue behind the secret of Guinness World Records, your priorities. So I want to talk about my actual Guinness World Record and give you a little history about why we did it and what was the purpose. So this right here is my best friend, Bill. And you know how I know he's my best friend? Because I call him with all these crazy ideas all the time, and he still listens to me. So one day I called up Bill, and I said, Bill, I've got a great idea. And he said, okay, Dave, what's that? I said, I want to set the record for the world's longest lemonade stand. And he paused. Okay, now let me go back in time and give you a little history about why we did it. Here are some kids in the neighborhood selling lemonade. When you think of a lemonade stand, this is generally what you think of, right? And in this picture, this is actually Gabriel, and Gabriel is a family member of mine who was diagnosed with cancer. So what happened was, Gabe was only 8 years old, and he was diagnosed with thing, and they really did say you only have 6 months left to live, and there was no miracle for him. He went through the chemotherapy. The amazing thing was he had lung cancer, the same as an adult would get who had been smoking their whole life. Now, it wasn't from secondhand smoke or anything, it just happened that way. And because of the location, they couldn't operate. But he'd go through the chemotherapy, he never lost his hair. He would literally come home from the hospital and ride his bike after the chemotherapy. So amazing resiliency within this kid. So finally what happened was when hospice came in and they said, okay, look, there's really not much more we're going to be able to do, Gabe got taken home, and the social worker and the nurse came over that same day. Well, Gabe was sleeping, and so they said, oh, you know, poor Gabe will come back tomorrow. And his mom said, no, not poor Gabe, just come back tomorrow. So what happens was, they're coming back the next day, and his mom says to Gabe, Gabe, the social worker's here. She says, tell him I'm not home. She says, you tell him you're not home. So he ran to the front door, and he kicked the front door open. He says, we're not home. Shut the door, and he locked it. The excitement of a kid to be able to just be so excited about everything, he just had the whole world ahead of him. And so one of the funnest days that he did go on a wish for Make-A-Wish, but that was not his favorite day. We had a neighbor who was a chef at a local restaurant, and Gabe always wanted to be a chef, so they brought Gabe in, and they let him be a chef for the day. Okay, so they got him the little chef outfit, the chef hat. Obviously, it didn't fit very well. And we spent the whole day there, people feeding, the restaurant opened specifically for us, all kinds of things. And the end of the day, and we can't find Gabe. We're like, where is Gabe? What is going on? I mean, we had been there for like 3.5 hours. Where do you think we found him? No, he was washing dishes in the back. That little power hose is the best thing in the world to an 8-year-old. So he loved that. And he always said that was the best day of his life, was the day that he got to be a chef for 3 hours. So unfortunately, as you can already gather from the story, Gabe passed away. He lived a short 6 months, and then he passed away. But one of the things that we realized while we were in the hospital with Gabe was how many other children also in our area were facing cancer. So that next year, when I called Bill and I said, Bill, I want to set the record for the world's longest lemonade stand. I want to do it as a way to honor Gabe and raise awareness for all these other families that have a child with cancer. So we had this huge why we wanted to do it. And so what happened was, Bill, being the good friend that he is, he didn't say, well, where are you going to build that and where are you going to get all this stuff? We began the plan. It took us about 6 months to plan, and here's the banner that we put out. We did it on June 11th of 2011. People always say, well, where do you set up a half-mile-long lemonade stand? We did it at the rec center around the walking path, and here's the actual map of how we set it up. Now, each one of those squares represents 2 8-foot tables. So we had to have 326 8-foot tables. The question people always ask is, where did you get 326 8-foot tables, Dave? Well, one of my beliefs is what? There's always a way. When we were just looking for a safe place to be able to have them, we went to the rec center, and they said, yeah, that would be great. And they said, what are you doing for tables? We said, we don't know. We haven't gotten that far. He goes, oh, we have a whole shed of them out there. He goes, we have so many different events. You can use those tables. So the tables were already at the location that we were going to be at. Okay? So we set up all those tables. There's an actual picture from Lenny. You can see that went all the way around. So we had to set up 326 8-foot tables. So it was almost a half-mile long. 53 rolls of plastic tablecloth to be able to roll out. And it took 117 volunteers to not only set up that morning, serve lemonade, cookies, and all those kind of things. So people always ask, well, how much lemonade did you sell? Well, we sold about 750 gallons of lemonade and 5,000 cookies. Okay, so it was a lot of lemonade and cookies. But the amazing thing about that day was there was many challenges that we had throughout the way, but we had such a big why we were doing it that we didn't stop. We were on every news channel and every newspaper. We were on the radio. Whatever it was, we had that opportunity to be able to share that story of why we were doing it. So we were highly motivated to be able to succeed. And so now that goal, even if we wouldn't have set the record, we accomplished amazing growth because we raised so much awareness within the community about these other children that had cancer and what was going on. And so that was a big thing. On that day, we were able to honor Gabriel, and we raised awareness for children with cancer. But here's the important part of this message. For one day, we were the very best in the world. For that one day, we were better than everybody else. We still hold that record, but it was for that one day we were the very best. Which leads us to the last clue, which is growth, to be able to grow and do those things. So who thinks they've already figured out what the secret is to Guinness World Records? Well, first, Sean Aker, and this is a great book. If you love books, read The Happiness Advantage. Sean Aker says, Guinness Book of World Records lists the greatest records ever set. He said, however, it's only a fossil record. It speaks only to what has been done, not how much can be done. Or in other words, what he's saying is that the Guinness Book of World Records is only proof that human potential exists. Okay? Because every day, ordinary people like you and I are doing extraordinary things. They're doing amazing things that you never thought were possible. I mean, people who really set a goal, a big goal, to be able to achieve something and work towards it. Let's review the things of the secret. The first one was beliefs. So I want you to think, what if you believed you could go higher, faster, and longer than you ever have before? Would you try? Would you try?
Yes.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what if your goals were about growth and not just outcomes? What would they be? Would you set bigger goals if you knew that you couldn't fail because your only goal was to grow and be able to do that? The third clue is action. What if you change your beliefs about your potential and what you could accomplish? What if you took action based on that, knowing that you could go out and do those things? The fourth clue is the outcomes. What if you spent your time on what was most important to you? How would your day be better, right? If you focus on things that are really most important to you, And then the fifth thing is the growth. What is the key moments each day that you can do your very best? And do you feel like you could reach your potential? So these all go into a little summary circle and they build on each other. Because when you believe you can do more and you set a goal for something really big and you take action towards it and you focus on the priorities, you're going to grow. And then that builds your belief. And this is a circle that just keeps going and going and going. And that's the beauty of the human potential. So I want everybody to stand up, put your hands on your hip, because we're going to reveal what happens. I want you to do your superhero pose. If you're a guy, you can be Superman. If you're a lady, you can be Wonder Woman. Put your hands on your hips. Okay, put your chest out, because we're going to reveal the secret right now, and I want you to feel good about it. Everybody taking a deep breath. I want you to be like the Justice League. And I can say that because my last name is Justus. See, so this is like perfect. So here's the secret. The greatest measure of potential is inside you. And it's still inside you today. So what I want to encourage you to do, and I've left you all little cards on your desk, on the thing there, I'm giving you permission from this day forward to be amazing. Take one of these cards, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, put it on your desk, whatever you want to do. Take it with you and remind you that your potential is based on you and what you believe. And then these are what I want to end with. Every day, when it matters most, I want you to strive to be your very best. That key meeting, key appointment, that key time, the dinner you're having with your family, whatever that is, make it your very best, okay? Second thing is, believe you can go higher, faster, and longer than you ever have before. Set goals that stretch you and cause you to go forward. And then finally, be immersed in the moment, and you'll discover your full potential. Thank you.